because this whole year of 1965, Srila Prabhupada only wrote about 8 letters. And, excuse me? I already started. Prabhuji. So now I have to start over, right? All right. So now we've lost 25 minutes. We're at the 1965 November time. Srila Prabhupada was alone. He was staying at the kindness of Dr. Ramamurti Mishra in his office, a little side room. No kitchen, no bathroom, no bed, nothing, just a little room, like a studio, no window. So Prabhupada at this time, he had to consider, his visa was running out, November 17th, his visa was going to run out. Was he going to go back to India? Unsuccessful. Was he going to extend his visa? Was he going to go to Montreal? If he went to Montreal, it means he would lose his visa for America. He wouldn't be able to come back again. But in Montreal, there were more Indians. He hadn't met any Indians yet. It's just Dr. Mishra. And he went to visit the different societies, such as the Shivananda and the Ramakrishna Mission. They wouldn't let him speak. And Dr. Mishra, he would allow him to give kirtan, but no one would allow him to speak because bhakti wasn't part of their program, nor was Krishna Bhavanamrit, Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada was at a point, what was he going to do? So he was writing to the few people that were supporting him. And who did he write to most? He wrote to Sally Agarwal most. She was actually his sponsor. It wasn't Gopal. It was Sally Agarwal who was a sponsor because she was an American citizen. And he wrote consecutively 3 letters to her. So we left off last week. We were in the middle of one of the letters. And it corresponds to what Satsvarup Maharaj is describing. Of course, Satsvarup Maharaj, he couldn't give all of the letters in the book. So he paraphrased the letters. But because now we have in the archives all of these letters that have been collected, we're going through them line by line, word by word, because this is where the information comes from, what actually Prabhupada was going through at this time. So, we're going to finish this one letter to Sally. Prabhupada was encouraging Sally in this letter that we started last week to come to New York and open up an Indian restaurant. Because Prabhupada, in his wanderings around New York City, he had found what he considered to be the perfect building. He felt it was right in the center of the city. It was 72nd Street. There was downtown, there was uptown. And he thought that the building was just perfect. It had a bronze facade in the front, very beautiful. It had a basement, ground floor, first floor, mezzanine. So he was considering how to get that building. Of course, he needed money. It was $100,000. But even if he got the building, how was he going to maintain it? Because he was going to have to pay at least 15 years. For the next 15 years, he would have to pay mortgage. Prabhupada, of course, he was an expert businessman. He knew exactly what had to be done. So he wrote to Sally. He said, you start your restaurant, I'll teach you. You can make easily $1,000 a month just on rental. What to speak of from your restaurant? Now, here's what Prabhupada wrote. This West 77th Street is just in the center of the city, and I see there is a suitable place also now vacant for this restaurant business. And if you come here for a day or two, you can see the place and decide if you can start the business. The house is suitable for residence of the restaurant keeper, And you see all these personally if you come here for a day or two. If you come here, there will be no inconvenience for you, because there was one lady friend at West 108th Street, and she will be very glad to accommodate you for a day or two. I think you should come and see the prospect of the business. I am sure you will get very good profit if you start this business, and I shall teach you how to prepare nice vegetable dishes. I wish that you may consider this proposal a little seriously and decide to come. There might be one more line here. Here for a day or two. So, at the end of last week's classes, first we saw that what actually happened to this building. It became the center of the Bikram Yoga, because this is what Prabhupada wanted to do. He wanted to teach Bhakti Yoga. Instead, it became a Bikram Yoga center. And then after that, it became a restaurant. It became a Pizza Hut. So the house, which I have seen for this purpose, is just suitable for this great missionary work, as if it was built for this purpose only. And this is a portion of a letter that Prabhupada wrote to Sumati Morarji, because he was working from both sides. The Indian side, Sumati Morarji, because he felt she was wealthy enough, she could just buy the building as her own personal property. And Sally, because she was so enthusiastic to assist Prabhupada in America, she could be the person who got things going by the American style, by opening the restaurant. Your simple willingness to do the act will complete everything smoothly. And thinking that you will agree to this, I am just giving you an idea of the space. Here. Dimensions, fully air-conditioned, bronze front, and the house is practically 3-storied. So now, okay. Yes, I have extended my visa period up to 1st April 1966, so Prabhupada decided to take the advice of Sumati Morarji. He extended his visa by paying $10, but I do not know how I shall live. He had no money. Another ship of Scindia navigation is starting on the 17th November, but my negotiation with some publisher is not yet finished. The Paragon Book Gallery has received the 25 sets of books as sent by Gopal. The arrangement is that after selling the 25 sets, they will pay the money and further sets will be taken. Similarly, I may arrange with other booksellers in Los Angeles, because it is learned that in California, people are more interested in such books. But I cannot go to California for want of money. Besides that, I have to embark on ship from New York. California is 3,000 miles away from here, and it is better to return to India from California directly without coming back here. But I have got my return ticket from New York. So all of this Prabhupada is writing to Sally Agarwal, because he has no one to speak to about these details in New York City. Just a few students from Dr. Mishra's classes are coming to hear him speak on Bhagavad Gita, but no intimate friendship so far has been struck up in New York City. He's wandering, he's going from place to place. This is how Prabhupada is finding the bookshops. He's taking buses, he's looking around. So he found Paragon Bookshop, and they agreed to take 25 sets. That's a lot, 25. It was $20 a set. That means $1,000 worth in advance Prabhupada is giving. And now, since he's decided to stay, he extended till April. Now he has to wait for the books to be sold because he's put an investment there with the bookshop and other bookshops also. So I'm not very fixed up what to do or not. The first consideration is that I must be in New York at least for 10 to 15 days more for deciding the publication affair. And then I may leave this place for India or California. So we can see, anyone who's ever been to America, getting from New York City to California, even if you drive there in a car, it takes at least 3 days, 3,000 miles. It's a very long distance across the whole country. But Prabhupada, hearing from the students, hearing from other people, seeing what the condition is in New York, he heard that California, the people might be more interested in his message. So he was considering, since he wasn't having that much success in New York, maybe he should take that chance, that risk, and go to California. But he had no contact at that time. But the place where I am living now has so many inconveniences which I do not wish to narrate in this small letter. Yes, I am taking my meals once only for this inconvenience. Prabhupada would have to walk 7 blocks to cook for himself and Dr. Mishra every day, 10 o'clock. He would make 1 meal. In the evening, I take some milk and fruit, and nowadays, the night being very long, I feel sometimes for this night starvation. He had no way to cook in his room, so he was actually starving. 1 time a day he was able to eat, that's all. Now, we'll go on with what Satsrup Maharaj has to say. This is November 9th at 6 o'clock p.m. While Prabhupada sat alone in his 5th floor room in Dr. Mishra's yoga studio, the light suddenly went out. And remember, Prabhupada had no windows, total blackness. This was his experience of the first moments of the New York City blackout of 1965. In India, power failure occurred commonly. So Prabhupada, while surprised to find the same thing in America, remained undisturbed. He began chanting the Hare Krishna mantra on his beads. Meanwhile, outside his room, the entire New York metropolitan area had been plunged into darkness. The massive power failure had suddenly left the entire city without electricity, trapping 800,000 people, that's 8 lakh people, in the subways. Can you imagine being underground in the subways, no electricity, total darkness in the dark tunnels of the subways, and affecting more than 30 million people in 9 states and 3 Canadian provinces. 2 hours later, a man from Dr. Mishra's apartment arrived at the door with candles and some fruit. He found Prabhupada in a pleasant mood, sitting there in the darkness, chanting Hare Krishna. The man informed him of the serious nature of such a blackout in New York City. Prabhupada thanked him and returned again to his chanting. The blackout lasted until 7 the next morning. So this is what Prabhupada wrote to Sally about the blackout. Yes, there was all darkness in New York on the 10th instant, and it was not a happy incident. I learned that many people remained in the elevators and in the subway trains for more than 7 to 8 hours in darkness. I do not read newspapers, but there must have been some mishaps also which we may not know. That is the way of material civilization, too much depending on machine. At any time the whole thing may collapse, and therefore we may not be self-complacent, depending so much on artificial life. So this is Prabhupada's conclusion, because the whole country of America is so dependent on electricity, on machines. Prabhupada used to joke that his American students, his disciples, they can't sleep unless they hear a machine running. And even to shave, because here in India, they would just have an ordinary shaver. But in America, they had to have the fancy electric shaver that would make so much noise. So he would see the difference, how simple life is in India. And in America, there's so much so-called advancement, but then just no electricity, and all of a sudden 30 million people are in danger because they depend on that The modern life of civilization depends wholly on electricity and petrol, and both of them are artificial for man. You will be surprised to know that I had to take help of the old crude method of lightening by burning some vegetable oil and use a small bowl as lamp to save myself from the extreme darkness. Now here when the lights go out, we have no problem. We know what to do. Just take a little bit of oil, you find a string, you light it, and it stays very nicely lighting for as long as you put the oil in. So this is exactly what Prabhupada did in his little room. I could not procure any candle from the shop, but by the grace of Krishna, one friend, Mr. Bill, happened to come, and he arranged for some fruits and candle. Yes, in India, we have such experience of failure of electricity, but I was surprised to see the same thing in America. In India, the village people say that in Europe, here it's called balaitis, the foreigners are called balaiti. So in Europe, or balait, also there is ass. So and I saw it practically that it is true. Even in such an advanced country, there may be possibility such failure, but failure in America is more dangerous than that in India. In India, they are not so much dependent on electricity, but in America, the whole activity is dependent on electricity. And I think on that night, it was a great deal of loss to the American nation. It was actually panic, because the people, they had never dreamed that there wouldn't be electricity. I remember one time one family came here to Vrindavan, and of course in the 70s we didn't expect electricity. You just learned to live without it. We didn't even have running water here. We'd have to go to the well in the front of the temple and draw the water up from the well. It's just the way we lived, and we were accustomed to it. So this mother and her son came, and they went on a preaching engagement here. It was when Prabhupada was here. And there was no water. And so the poor boy, he goes to turn on the tap, and no water comes out of the tap. And he said, "Mommy, take me back to America. I can't live like this." Because no one even expects that when you turn on the tap, there's not going to be water, or you turn on the light, there's not going to be light. You just expect these things. And all of a sudden, 30 million people, they had nothing, and they had no pre-training of what to do when the lights go out. And this is what happened. Anyway, the danger is past. But from the papers it is learnt the loss is very great. I do not feel much cold now, but it is learned that it will increase more and more. And before that, I wish to leave this place. But if you start the business, I am sure I shall be very comfortable at your good motherly care. If you decide to come for a day or two, please drop me a letter immediately when you are coming. More when we meet, and hope you are all well. With my blessings and good wishes for you all, awaiting your reply. Yours affectionately, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. So this is the dark Grand Central Station in New York City. Grand Central Station is where all the trains from all over America come to New York City. We used to do Sankirtan there. And the people, again, they were in total darkness. They didn't know what to do for the whole night, so they all just lie down on the floor and went to sleep there. And this is because they couldn't move anywhere. They're dependent on buses, on trains, on subways. Subways, the commuters, millions of commuters every day use the subways to get to and from their home and their work. So without the subway, they can't live. So they just had to lie down where they were and go to sleep for the night until the lights came on again in the morning. So now, as Prabhupada was wandering, he was looking at different buildings in case he couldn't get that one for $100,000, in case no one came forward, which no one did. So he also met one Mr. Krishna K. Dandeep. And he was down at 13th Street. That's at the lower east side, where the village is. So Prabhupada was already looking and searching uptown and downtown. So this building where he met with Mr. Dandeep, it's located in the heart of Greenwich Village, on a charming street lined with mature trees and renovated houses, moments from all conveniences, including the best retail, restaurants, and transportation. So when Prabhupada was looking at this particular house, now, if we were to rent it, it would cost $50,000 a month in rental. So Prabhupada, he had big dreams for New York City. He wanted to make this successful because, as Maharaj had mentioned in the Hindi class, his two godbrothers, one was Bhakti Saranga Goswami, and the other was Ban Maharaj. Bhakti Saranga Goswami, he had started something in London, hardly any response from there. And then Ban Maharaj had tried to start something in Berlin. 2 devotees were made. Much expense at the hands of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, who was supporting his disciples there. Imagine from India he would have to send money to England and Germany. And Prabhupada, he had no support whatsoever from India. He came empty-handed. And now he was looking, how am I going to get a foothold here? Because he knew that simply preaching here and there, giving lectures, he was not going to get a following. He saw that he had to have his own place. So this was one of those places where he was looking. Now, Prabhupada had written a long letter to Sumati Morarji, which we studied 2 weeks ago. She hadn't yet replied him. And Prabhupada was already writing another letter to her. Please accept my greetings and blessings of Lord Balakrishna, because she was a devotee of Laddu Gopal, Balakrishna. I hope you have already received my letter of the 27th ultimo, and I hope to receive your reply very soon. Well, Prabhupada didn't receive a reply still. He was going on. And in continuation of my letter, as above mentioned, I beg to inform you that the number of Hiranyakashipus and Ravanas in this age of Kali increased more than that in other yugas. Now, Prabhupada, at the beginning of his letter, he doesn't mention who these Hiranyakashipus and Ravanas are. So we're in suspense. Who is Prabhupada talking about? It's very interesting. Hiranyakashipus are always inimical with the devotees of the Lord, even if such devotee happens to be a son. Hiranyakashipu persecuted Prahlad although he was a boy of 5 years old and a beloved son of Hiranyakashipu. So we haven't read much about Prabhupada being persecuted, but something is in there that Prabhupada wants to tell Sumati Morarji. He's trying to make a very important point to her. As I've already informed you, that the American people in general are very much inclined to receive something from Indian culture of spiritual knowledge. They would be a first-class recipient for the Bhagavatam culture, provided an organized attempt is made for this purpose. And this is what Prabhupada was aiming for. He wanted to present his Srimad Bhagavatam. He felt that the American people were ready to receive it because materially they had no inconvenience whatsoever. They were ready for spiritual life. The organized method is like this. They should have association of bona fide devotees of the Lord. They should join the kirtan, glorifying the Lord. They should hear the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. They should have intimate touch with the temple or place of the Lord. And they should be given ample chance to worship the Lord in the temple. The way of Srimad Bhagavatam is open for everyone. So this is Srila Prabhupada, you can say, in a dreaming state, because thinking, feeling, and willing. Prabhupada knew what was needed to make his American mission successful. He had to present Srimad Bhagavatam, and he had to have a temple where the people could come and hear and associate with pure devotees of the Lord. He didn't have those things yet. He was thinking what was needed. He felt that these people might be able to help him, and then he willed it by trying to encourage him to take up his mission as well. Apart from civilized men like the Americans, even the Kirata, Andhra, Pulinda, Pukasha, Abira, Sumbu, Yavana, Kashadaya, or any other lower caste, all of them can be trained up to be devotees of the Lord under proper guidance of a pure and bona fide devotee. And you'll see that each one of these different categories of the outcasts, Prabhupada was able to make a temple. All these places. So Prabhupada, although he knew it was possible, how to get from this point to that point took so much endeavor. And now he didn't have anyone to help him, but he knew that by Lord Chaitanya's desire, it was going to be successful. That is the instruction of Sukadeva Goswami, imparted to Maharaj Parikshit. I think, therefore, that a temple of Bal Krishna in New York may immediately be started for this purpose, and as devotee of Lord Bal Krishna, you should execute this great and noble work. Till now there is no worshipable temple of the Hindus in New York, although in India there are so many American missionary establishments and churches. So I shall request you to do this noble act, and it will be recorded in the history of the world that the first Hindu temple is started by a pious Hindu lady, Srimati Sumati Morarji, who is not only a big business magnate in India, but a pious Hindu lady and a great devotee of Lord Krishna. This task is for you and glorious at the same time. You can see how Prabhupada, he's just doing everything possible to encourage Sumati Morarji to be the most famous Indian in the whole world, because America so far had no temple, not a single temple, although the Americans had started many churches in India and had been able to convert many, many people to the Christian doctrine by very organized system. Prabhupada knew that that system had to be used the other way around. Now he had to introduce the real culture of India and help the Christians understand the greatness of this Vedic philosophy. Simply by casual lectures, there is no possibility of any tangible work, but the above-mentioned standard work will do impress the people what actually the Hindu culture is. I have already seen a nice house for this purpose, and if you purchase that house for this purpose as your personal property and give the facility of working, then you will see how the mission of Bhagavati culture is being preached here in America, beginning from New York. I do not wish to disclose the names of the Hiranyakashipus. Now we're getting to what Prabhupada was speaking about. Here in America, who are against this Bhagavad preaching. There are so many Indian missionaries, like the Ramakrishna Mission, Shivananda Mission, etc., and all of them are against Bhagavatam culture, and every one of them has refused to give facility to speak on the Bhagavati culture. So Prabhupada was visiting these places. With open arms he had come. Please, I've brought your own culture. Let me speak, let me lecture, let me distribute these books. But the Hiranyakashipus wouldn't allow him. Each of them have their own house, but instead of worshiping the Supreme Lord, they have created their own God, and they try to put such manufactured gods to compete with Lord Krishna. So unless there is a place for me and facility to work systematically, my Bhagavati mission will not be workable in this place. I have no ambition to become the proprietor of any temple or house in America, because what shall I do with them after becoming a sannyasi? But for the facility of work, our own house is absolutely required. So Sumati Morarji, remember, she sponsored a full volume of Prabhupada's Bhagavatams. She gave him the free ticket. She gave him a return ticket. She encouraged him with letters all along. So he felt that she was the right person to start this first temple in America. Please, therefore, purchase a house here in New York and let me work very seriously for this mission of Bhagavatam culture. And I'm sure that your goodness will not only be recognized by the Lord, but you will be recognized by the whole Hindu community. Please take up this work very seriously, and on hearing from you without delay, I shall let you know further details. So we had seen previously you can't call it a temple, where the Ramakrishna Mission had their meetings in their house. So this is the place of worship. I can't figure out who the deities are on the altar, but this is the Shivananda Mission inside. My term to stay in America will be finished by the 17th November 1965. But believing on your foretelling, you should stay there till you fully recover and complete your mission. Don't come back to, there's text missing in the letter. The house which I have seen for this purpose is just suitable for this great missionary work, as if it was built for this purpose only. And your simple willingness to do the act will complete everything smoothly. And thinking that you will agree to this, I am just giving you an idea of the space, etc. So Prabhupada then gave her all the dimensions as we saw in the previous slides. It's because she's also very highly acumen business magnate. She was they had the biggest shipping company in all of India, international, and she was the president of the whole shipping association of the world that would meet in London. So Prabhupada was convinced that if she saw a good business opportunity, she would see that this was worthwhile investing in. So he told her all of the details. The ground floor may be utilized for preparation prasadam of Balakrishna, because the preaching centers will not be for dry speculations only, but for actual gain for delicious prasadam. I have already tested how the people here like the vegetable prasadam prepared by me. They will forget meat eating, and they will pay for the expenses. So this was Prabhupada's program. Prasadam distribution. You can eat your way back to Godhead. And this is how Prabhupada lured many of the devotees. Because even Stephen Jobs of Apple, he would walk miles every Sunday just to get a free feast at the Portland Temple. And there were many, many students who they were getting free lunches at their universities handed out by the devotees, and they became devotees afterwards just by taking prasadam. So wherever there was a temple, there was automatically prasad distribution. We'll see in 2nd Avenue, 26 2nd Avenue, how the boys would come every day. Prabhupada would cook for them. He would make them to take more and more prasadam, and that way they became purified by taking prasadam, and they became devotees. So these are some of our centers around the world. We have hundreds of Govindas. Now, surprisingly, this one on top, this is a Govindas at Dubai, in the UAE. They even have Govindas there. So this is the effect of Prabhupada's preaching. All over the world, there are these Govinda restaurants now. By the way, this room used to be our Govinda's restaurant when the temple first opened. We had a winding staircase going down to the kitchen where the restaurant kitchen is now, and this is where all the people would come. And this was then in 1983, Surabi Swami, he moved it down to where it is now. And this became I forget what this became afterwards, but anyway, now it's our conference room. The Americans are not poor men like the Indians, and if they appreciate a thing, they are prepared to spend any amount for such hobby. They are being exploited by simply jugglery of words and bodily lectures, the jugglery of words, in the sense that they couldn't understand. They were meditating on a circle and thinking that they were going to make some spiritual advancement that way. And then the gymnastics, that was part of their program also, the gymnastics, and of course programs like Bikram Yoga, how the people were being cheated in the name of yoga. And Prabhupada saw that. But when they will have the actual commodity and feel pleasure by eating very delicious prasadam of Balakrishna, I am sure a unique thing will be introduced in America. As soon as everything is arranged, I shall bring my assistants from India to help me. Prabhupada was still dreaming that he was going to get help from India. No, he had to import his devotees to India to start the temples, just as when we started this temple. We had not a single Indian devotee. And Prabhupada, he wrote to Guru Das, he said, how long can I keep importing? You have to make devotees here. No one among our entire crew could speak a word of Hindi. And Prabhupada used to joke with, he used to ridicule that he would, we knew so little Hindi. Prabhupada started Hindi classes for us every day in the temple under the Tamal tree. And he would sit there and make sure we all learned the Hindi, the alphabet, and we had notebooks, everything. And in order to get anything done, there was one very, very loving devotee of Srila Prabhupada named Vishwambar Dayal. It's just here next to the Shamama ashram. That was his home. He fell in love with Srila Prabhupada and with the devotees. So he was the only person who spoke English and Hindi both. And in order to get anything done, we would have to call Bhagatji, which is the name that he was given, Bhagatji. So Bhagatji was the via medium between all of Prabhupada's imported devotees and the rest of India. Until finally some devotees picked up a little bit of Hindi, but without Prabhupada made Bhagatji the general manager of the temple. And Bhagatji, he once told me, he said, yes, Prabhupada has made me the general manager. And then he said, there was once a family of so many brothers, and they were so poor that none of them had shoes. And they would have to work in the fields without shoes. So finally, they got enough money, they bought one pair of shoes, and they gave those shoes to the eldest brother. And then the eldest brother said, oh, now you've given me the shoes, that means now I have to do all the work. So he said, Prabhupada has made me the general manager, and it means I have to do all the work for the whole temple. He was just joking because he loved Prabhupada so much. So this is the way Prabhupada, no, he wasn't going to get help from India. Not a single Indian came to help Prabhupada. Instead, he had to take his devotees back to India to start his temples here. All right, as soon as everything is arranged, I shall bring my assistants from India to help me in all details. The price of the house is $110,000, subject to alteration, and other expenses, $5,144. Prabhupada had no money. Immediately, cash may be paid on $35,000, and the balance by monthly installments to be completed in 15 years, or a whole amount may be paid at once, and then the rest of the letter is missing. So you can see from Prabhupada's room, he was writing these letters to Sumati Morarji, one of the wealthiest women in all of India, the wealthiest woman in India, and one of the wealthiest in the world. Then, again, getting no response from Sumati Morarji, he writes his third letter to Sally. Back and forth. And you can see, this is Prabhupada's soft-heartedness, his nature. He saw that the men weren't willing to help. He wrote to Tirtha Maharaj. Tirtha Maharaj will read in the Lilamrita here. He gave no promise of assistance. It was disappointing. But Prabhupada wouldn't be disappointed. So he wrote again to Sally. And this is a picture on this side of Sally's response to him, because she was giving him good practical advice for how to get things done in America. And it was what he needed also. For instance, she explained to him that, well, you cut Canada out of your idea, because if you leave for Canada, you won't be able to come back to America. So Prabhupada didn't go to Canada at that time. He did go later when his visa wasn't extended. Then he went, and very intelligently, Prabhupada, in Canada, it was very easy to get permanent residence. So he became a permanent resident in Canada, and on that, he was able to come back to America. So he was getting good advice from Sally in her letters to him, because she understood that, yes, he needed help. And although she was a mother of 2 small children, and the wife of, she had her husband to take care of, she had her parents to take care of, she was still trying to help Prabhupada from hundreds of miles away. I beg to thank you for your kind letter of the 16th instant, and I have noted the contents carefully. I am glad to learn that you have been to your parents' house for a few days, and now you have returned home. I am still more glad to learn that you're going to observe the 3rd birthday of Miss Kamala Agarwal. Prabhupada was so affectionate. I remember we were in Delhi once with Srila Prabhupada, and the temple president there, Tejas, his wife had just delivered a baby. And we were so worried because Prabhupada's room was right next to where the baby was. If the baby cried, Prabhupada would be disturbed. So Prabhupada, he would come, and just like the little babies here, we're not disturbed. We know that these are the next devotees coming up, the next generation. So Prabhupada, he saw the little baby and started to play with the baby. And the baby would cry all night, teething. So Prabhupada said to Madira, who was the mother, she said, don't you know that you have to give the baby something hard, some wood to chew on? And then it won't be so painful for the baby? So he was a very experienced father of 5, and he loved little children. So he goes on. On this occasion, I should have presented her some ornaments, but as I am a sannyasi, I can simply offer my blessing for her long life and good prosperity. She cannot now read, otherwise at least I should have presented a set of my books. But you set aside 1 set of my books for her future reading, when she will grow up a beautiful and educated girl with full God consciousness. So we had the same wonderful experience with Prabhupada's family. When I had my baby here, we went to Mayapur for the grain ceremony there, for them to perform it, because they were doing yajnas there and everything. And Prabhupada's sister, her son came, and Pishima couldn't come. She was very old by that time. But just out of kindness, the son, the family, they gave my little baby, 6-month-old baby, ornaments, nupura, the ankle bells and bangles, just because this is the culture. They love children. They love to encourage children in the cultural activities, take part in the sanskaras. And Prabhupada carried this on. He was in no way a sannyasi who didn't care about the family members. No, everyone was his family. As said by the astrologer, Prabhupada built a house big enough for the whole world to live in. That means we're all family members. And in our original, when Prabhupada started the life membership program here in India, actually Morarji was speaking about that in his class. So our membership was just 1,111 rupees in those days. And the big caption was, become a member of the Hare Krishna family. So we all felt that way, like a big worldwide family. And Prabhupada encouraged that, and he treated us like a family. Daughters, sons, grandsons, and all of that. So Prabhupada, even in this little example, giving his blessings to the 3-year-old child. I am obliged to your good daughter. for awarding me a good degree as Swami Jesus, which is actually a great honor for me. Sometime the Lord speaks through innocent child, and I take this honor as sent by Lord Jesus through an innocent child free from all formalities of the current society. Lord Jesus, preach the message of God, and I've taken up the same mission, and it would be a good luck for me if I can follow the footprints of Lord Jesus, who preached the message of God in spite of all persecution. Lord Jesus is a living example how one has to suffer in this material world simply for the matter of preaching the message of God. So, of course, we understand that Sally, because Prabhupada having stayed at their home, going there every day, Sally was Christian by background, and therefore she had a lot of connections with all the churches in Butler, Pennsylvania, and by her good connections, Prabhupada was able to do a lot of preaching there, and he appreciated very much the pure Christian teachings of Jesus Christ. So we, of course, but Prabhupada did not compromise. One cannot continue killing animals and at the same time be a religious man. That is the greatest hypocrisy. Jesus Christ said, "Do not kill," but hypocrites nevertheless maintain thousands of slaughterhouses while posing as Christians. So Srila Prabhupada, when he would speak to the priests and the fathers, he would immediately bring up this point, that your commandment is, "Thou shalt not kill." Why are you killing the animals? Because Prabhupada was not just a humanitarian. No, he was interested in all living entities and liberating them from the bonds of samsara. And therefore, he tried to convince first and foremost that at least give up your meat eating, give up your killing for the tongue. In most circumstances, he was not successful. In the Bhagavatam also, there was another example like Lord Jesus. He is Prahlad Maharaj, a boy of 5 years old, but because he was a great devotee of God and preaching the message of God among his little classmates, his atheist father tried to kill him. So the atheist class of men are always inimical to the devotees of God, even though such devotee happens to be the atheist son like Prahlad. So in these letters, Prabhupada, and so many times Prabhupada, this is why Prabhupada, he initiated the worship of Lord Nrsimhadev in our temples, because we as devotees, we're innocent, or at least we should be innocent, and we're trying to preach the message of Krishna consciousness, and just like Prahlad, we're often persecuted in different circumstances, but if we take shelter of Lord Nrsimhadev, he will protect us. Now, again, Prabhupada is bringing up the building. I propose for starting the restaurant with the view that you may become one of the richest family in America. One can become rich only by trying his luck in business. Now, this is also what Prabhupada learned from his business experience with the company, that when he was working as a manager in the chemical company, he was getting a lot of envy from the other workers. They wanted to take over his post. So finally, the proprietor, he said, "You make your own place. I'll give you all of North India, and you become my representative." And at that time, Prabhupada was able to become very successful in business because he could make his own decisions. It is not possible by serving others. One should have independent source of income that is possible only if one is engaged in business or in landlordship. If you can invest $20,000 in a property in New York, which is worth $100,000, you can have at least $1,000 per month as the rent of the house, so that in 15 years' time, you become the proprietor of a good house in New York, which would fetch you $1,000 rent per month. That is my next proposal. I think you can invest $20,000 some way or other And if you can please do it immediately, because that is chance also. So, of course, Sally being a housewife and her husband being an engineer, he had to make the decision. And no, Sally did not come to visit at that time. But Prabhupada continued trying as any way he could. Now he goes on, the letter will end here. You can send me $40 and it will help me going over to California. I have decided like this. I am expecting a letter of reception from California, and if I get it, then I shall start for the country. Otherwise, by the first week of December next, I shall return to India. If I return to India, then I shall return your money before I start. Otherwise, I shall spend it for my California journey. So this is 1965. This is the height of the hippie culture, and the center, the epicenter of the hippie culture at that time was in California. So this is the great love be-in that was going on at that time in San Francisco, and Prabhupada had gotten an invitation to come there. Now, actually 1 year later, Prabhupada did come. 2 years later, in 1967, once his disciples set up a temple there. They were not even initiated yet. Only Mukunda and Janaki were initiated. And then Jamuna, Gurudas, they were initiated afterwards. Malati and Shyam Sundar. Those 6 devotees, three sets of householders, they went to San Francisco and opened up a temple there and invited Prabhupada. And Prabhupada was able to preach and lead kirtan with all of these hippies and turn them into happies. Okay, so we've finished now with Sally's letter, and we'll just read a little bit here, because now we've caught up to where Satsvarup Maharaj is in the Lilamrita. Srila Prabhupada received a reply to his letter of November 8th to Tirtha Maharaj in Calcutta. Prabhupada explained his hopes and plans for staying in America, but he had stressed that his godbrothers would have to give him their vote of confidence, as well as some tangible support. His godbrothers had not been working cooperatively. Each leader was interested more in maintaining his own building than in working with the others to spread the teachings of Lord Chaitanya around the world. So how would it be possible for them to share Srila Prabhupada's vision of establishing a branch in New York City? They would see it as a separate attempt. Yet despite the unlikely odds, he appealed to their missionary spirit and reminded them of the desires of their spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Their Guru Maharaj wanted Krishna consciousness to be spread in the West, but when Prabhupada finally got Tirtha Maharaj's reply, he found it unfavorable. His godbrother did not argue against his attempting something in New York, but he politely said that the Gaudiya Math funds could not be used for such a proposal. So by this time, by 1965, after Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati left this world, January 1st, 1937, they went to court to fight over who would be the next leader within the Gaudiya Math that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had started. The courts decided to break the Gaudiya Math into 2. And the major portion, including the temples in Calcutta, the Yog Pit in Mayapur, was put under the care of Bhakti Vilas Tirtha Maharaj. That's who Prabhupada was writing to. And then the other smaller portion was given to another disciple who later became a sannyasi, but he didn't stay a sannyasi for long. We heard about that about 2 years ago we heard about this, that he took sannyas, and then he came here to stay in Radhakund. He gave up his sannyas, married, and his wife was unchaste, and she poisoned their son, and he committed suicide. as a result. So one half or one portion of the Gaudiya Math was in disarray, and therefore all of the disciples, the sannyasis and leaders, who had helped to establish temples all over India, they took those temples and took them as their personal properties. They made different samitis and societies to maintain and protect their temples. And it was more or less a degeneration. Instead of regeneration and the Gaudiya Math growing, it was shrinking. And Bhaktivilas Tirtha Maharaj, though he said, yes, you can do whatever you like, but we will not help you. We don't have the funds for it. Though Prabhupada, in his letter, he said, you have the whole Calcutta Marwaris in your grip. You just have to say one word, and they will certainly get this building. But Bhaktivilas Tirtha Maharaj was not willing to do that. And last week after the class, Narendra Krishna Prabhu, he described that he had gone to the center of Bhaktivilas Tirtha Maharaj. This is after he disappeared. And they were critical of Srila Prabhupada, saying that no, he just did this for his own glory. They could not understand that Prabhupada was simply carrying out the message of his spiritual master. He never took any credit of his own. He gave all credit to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And he was the most successful all over the world for carrying out the prediction of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So starting next week, we will read about the reply that Prabhupada gave to the unfavorable letter that Bhaktivilas Tirtha Maharaj wrote to him. Hare Krishna.